Okay, hey guys, welcome to class. We got a few minutes till it's 4, and then we'll get this little review session going. But for now, thanks again for just showing up and being part of the meeting. But get comfortable and just take a few moments, and we'll get into this in about 3.5 minutes. Just let me get a quick soft drink and be right back. Feel free. I know there's only a couple of us here so far. Probably going to be a little bit of, I would assume, I don't know for sure, but perhaps a little bit less attendance than normal because it's just review session day, and a lot of people will probably just choose to watch the replay. But it's good for you to be engaged and to be in the live stream if you're able to, because I think you just get a little bit more out of it. But anyway, 2 more minutes, then we'll go. Hey, Natalie, good to see you. Hi, Rose, good to see you there. And hey, Adriana, Jalissa. Thanks, guys, for being here. Hope you're having a good last week of the semester before we head to finals. I know a lot of people are probably stressed out with all the different things going on in their schedule and, with all the closures and stay-at-home orders, but here we are. Looks like we're going to make it through 2020, so that in itself is something, I guess, to celebrate. It's been a tough year for everybody. Hey, Sebastian, good to see you. Hi, Fernanda, my bad, thank you. I do have another student, Fernando. So anyways, Adriana, you say currently at work and you have a bad signal. Not to worry if that's the case. I'll allow the submissions to be counted on time as long as I'm receiving them today. My intent was for them to be before class time, but there's all kinds of things that can happen with internet outages and so forth. So I'll be flexible enough to just take it as on time. Just get it into me today if you can. All right then. So welcome back, guys. It's 4 o'clock. That means we're going to start our class. So the plan this week is very simple. We're just going to do a review session. We have some study guides that we can use to direct our review. Let me ask, have you guys noticed the study guides I mailed out over the weekend? If anyone can just confirm that one for me while we're here together, that'd be great. So just tell me you've been able to see it in titanium. Okay, great. So thank you. If you haven't checked yet, do go into your announcements from the class and you'll find it there. I sent it, I believe, on Friday or Saturday. But anyway, that's just the study guide of topics and concepts that follow after the midterm until the final. The test overall is cumulative. I'm going to emphasize a little bit more of the topics from the second half of the semester because it's more recent and you've already been tested on the first half with the midterm. But I don't want it to just be all about the last couple chapters. So I still want us to review, you know, the whole class cumulatively. But we have two different study guides. One of them I sent to you guys earlier in the semester before the midterm. And then the other one, as I just said, I delivered over the weekend. So let's go back and discuss these items that are on the study guide. We'll help each other out. We'll make sure that all the information is accurate and complete. And then, you know, based on your review, your notes, and all your other preparation through the semester, you should be able to do pretty well on the test. Let me make it clear the exact time and date for our final. So I'm just pulling up I have a syllabus here, trying to find it. Okay, yeah, so for us, the final exam is, it's in 1 week, so it's going to be Tuesday, the 15th of December, from 5 to 6:50. So let's just not forget that. And then yes, as I was saying, Melisha, it's the whole semester. Okay, so this is, we're talking about 12:15, 5 p.m. to 6:50 p.m. So just don't forget to be ready during that time slot to take the test next Tuesday. Other than that, other than the final, you know, your last homework is due today. Some have mentioned that. Make sure you send it in to me so I can give you your grade on it and complete all the work grading before your test comes. So yeah, it's in a week from now. It's not at our typical meeting time, as you guys know, which is 4 to 5:15. It's from 5 to 6:50, so that's just a slightly different meeting time, but that's the official time, and it's listed in your guys' syllabus too. Okay, so let's go into those study guides then and try and get the material clear. So I'm going to erase that so we have room on the board, but you'll see it in the syllabus too. Okay, so like, question, do you want to do the first half of the study guide from the midterm and before, or would you rather do the more recent material first and then save the earlier stuff for Thursday? I don't know if there's any votes or any kind of intuition or consensus about that, but I'm happy to do it either way, just depending on what you would prefer. So let me know if there's any thoughts. You're thinking the more recent, Christian? Fair enough, not a bad idea. So unless there's anyone else with a different idea, I'll just do that. So, and of course, you know, we did have a review of the earlier material before, you know, so you can always, of course, refer back to the earlier recorded lecture on that earlier material, but I'm offering you guys, of course, 2 review sessions this week. But let's do that then. We'll start with the stuff that's a little more up to date, the current material. So here's something that I want to do for everybody. I want this to go to dual platform so that I can share the screen on Zoom. But in order to have a posted recording that stays up for everybody, I'm going to allow this YouTube meeting to also continue to roll. So this is something that I've done a couple times in other classes, and it works pretty well. It's just I'm going to have the YouTube camera recording, but I'm also going to have Zoom. So I'm going to drop the Zoom link into our chat bar here, and then just follow the link to the Zoom meeting. If you want then later to come back to watch this recorded lecture, you'll find it on the YouTube channel. But those that are here watching live will get a little bit of additional benefit because you'll be able to see the shared screen, and I think it'll help you to focus. So here's a link. Go ahead, please, if you're here, click that link. And, you know, you might have to, like, say, mute the microphone or silence the speaker on one of the 2 meetings, depending on how your browser works and microphone, but not to worry. Okay, so just first, let's click the link. I'll be right there. Okay, so first things first, I'm going to share the screen here. Okay, screen sharing. Now, okay. Oops. expand that a little bit. Okay. Okay, so then, okay, so I've got the chat window open here. Quick question, can anybody tap into the Zoom chat and just let me confirm that you're hearing me, that the camera and the microphone is all working well? Okay, good, thank you, Jasmine. Cool, so, and you can see the screen, is the screen shared display? You see that there's the post-midterm review notes that are over here? Okay, great, thanks again. So I'm just going to try and run us through a bunch of these different topics that you see in the study guide. But I would love help. In fact, I don't want to do really much or any of the work. I would like for you guys to come up with the definitions and concepts either by typing them here in this chat on Zoom, or if you want, you can use your microphone or even camera. It's totally fine. But I just like the students to help each other with some of the material. And then when I think I need to step in to clarify or to add something or to make sure that everything's correct, then I'll go ahead and do that. And we'll make sure that we're getting all the information and that it's correct information. So you can refer to this as a reliable review session. Okay, so let's go ahead. We're starting the post-midterm review sheet, and it begins with the Chapter 5 topics, which are all about fallacies. What's a fallacy? That's the question. You got to tell me. I can't read your mind. You got to say something or write it. So what is it? What is a fallacy? I think you know it. Okay, good, Jasmine. So when an argument contains a logical error or flaw, that's right. So basically, they're logically flawed, logically erroneous arguments. And when they're containing that flaw, as you say, it makes the premises not provide the right kind of support to the conclusion. So they're problematic, flawed, logically erroneous arguments. And there's many ways to say that, but that is a very straightforward, concise definition. Okay, so we're going now down to the next. What's a fallacy of ambiguity, though? Now, that's one of the categories of fallacies. And the question is just, what is that category? So a fallacy of ambiguity is which type? We'll get through all the information fast, but you got to help me do it fast. Otherwise, there could be things that get left out. So just, when you think you have it, go ahead and say it. And if I need to help you, then I can clarify or add, information. But a fallacy of ambiguity, you'll find all of it in your notes or in the book or the online lectures that you'll be able to look at later. But for now, anyway, what do you think? Fallacy of ambiguity. It's not one of the fallacies, it's a type, and it contains within its scope like 7 or 8. Okay, Jasmine, good. Fallacies that include ambiguous words or confusion between concepts. There's also the mention of sloppy grammar. So arguments that contain sloppy grammar, ambiguous words, or confusion between similar concepts. That's right. So fallacies of ambiguity are called that because there's something ambiguous in them and you're not sure either what the words mean or what the reference is or what the grammatical use of the words are. Okay, so now let's go to equivocation. This is the first one of the fallacies of ambiguity. So which one is that? What kind of fallacy is equivocation? How does this fallacy get committed in an argument? So you just got to go back and tell me. I see Jasmine's been helping a lot. Fernanda, what do you got? Okay, so when a key term in an argument is used more than once and with different meanings, that's true. So for example, if I say to you, I'm at the bank and the bank is where you can deposit money, so I'm somewhere where you can deposit money. That would seem to make sense, but we could be equivocating on the word bank. Like in the one case, we mean blood bank. In the second premise, we mean financial bank. And so in that case, the conclusion wouldn't follow. So you just got to make sure that terms are being used in one standard way throughout the whole presentation of an argument. Otherwise, it's equivocation. Okay, now we move to amphiboly. Amphiboly is the which kind of fallacy? I mean, which one is this? It's when there's what kind of problem? What do you think here? Amphiboly?
A grammatical mistake in an argument.
Right, that's good. Oh, you have more?
Oh no, that's pretty much what I got.
Yeah, good. So it is when there's a grammatical ambiguity or mistake in an argument, and it makes it possible to draw more than one conclusion, so you're not sure which one to draw. Like if somebody said, okay, Trump and Biden had a really hard contest, and I'm just glad that he won. You know, so that's ambiguous, right? Because we're just saying he, but there's two male contestants, and so without further disambiguation, we would be left wondering what was the actual meaning of the person's statement there. So lots of examples could be given. I think on the quiz I asked you a kind of funny one, like the boys went skiing and got some ice cream cones, but they were too cold to enjoy. So in that case, it's ambiguous grammatically because we're not sure whether they, the plural pronoun, refers to the two boys that were too cold to enjoy the ice cream, or whether the ice cream were, the cones were the things referred to by the pronoun they, and they were too cold to be enjoyed by the person eating it. Anyway, okay, so we go ahead now. Fallacy of accent. What's this one? You could tell me what's the accent fallacy. The word itself appears kind of in its definition. So yes, that's right, Fernando. So when the meaning of an argument or a statement changes based on which word or phrase in it is being emphasized. Right, so sometimes we can create a different or false misunderstanding of an original statement by accenting the word. A parent says, why are you allowing this friend of yours to come over? I told you that I don't ever want them to walk through the door again. And then the child is like, oh, I know, but that's the thing. You said don't let them walk through the door, and I let them in through the garage. So isn't that fair enough? But, you know, obviously the point of the statement wasn't just that literally they can't come through a door, but any other opening is fine. Therefore, that would be an accent fallacy, but many other cases besides that type could also be mentioned. Okay, now it's division. How does a division fallacy go? This is the one where you get what kind of conclusion from what information. What's the division fallacy? It's like the characteristics of a whole group. Okay, good, Jade. So you're saying when one incorrectly infers that every member of a group has a characteristic that the whole group has. Exactly. So like the United States is the most powerful country in the world, and I am one citizen of the United States, and so therefore I am the most powerful person in the world. But that's not true at all. The country is a thing that we are the individual members of, but the whole thing can have features that we don't see in the individual parts. So like, you know, I could be part of a rich family, but that doesn't mean that I'm rich. Anyway, those would be cases of a division fallacy. So you're drawing a conclusion about one member of a whole group, and you're assuming that that one member has to have a feature that the whole group as a collective has, and it's not always true. Now, composition is the other way around, and so I could just kind of make short work of that. The composition fallacy is when you assume that because one member of a larger group has a certain feature or attribute, that means that the whole group has the same attributes. So like, you know, I am a professor, and so therefore my whole family are professors. But this is not true. Definitely not in my family. I'm 100% the only one that's taken this direction with my life. But yeah, so that's just one example. Or the individual cells in my body cannot be seen without a microscope, and therefore my whole body cannot be seen without a microscope. That's certainly false, but that's the kind of idea behind composition. How about this? Men make more money than women in America, which is just true. It might not be fair, but you know, that's something for us to work on. But anyway, men make more money than women, and so my dad must make more money than my mom. But that's not necessarily true. Just because men as a whole make more money doesn't mean that in one individual case, that same thing is going to be seen. All right, so then let's go into the next category of fallacies. So now we're talking about fallacy of relevance. What's the fallacy of relevance category definition? Arguments or fallacies where what? Let's see, what do you know? Relevance fallacy? Okay, yeah, so good, Jasmine. When one or more of the premises of the argument is irrelevant or is just not related to the conclusion. Yeah, so sometimes the argument has evidence, premises, that don't even really relate to the conclusion, or they're not relevant to it. And that's certainly a problem, so that's another type of fallacy. Underneath that column, or in that category, in the file of relevance fallacy, we have all these things from number 9 to 16. So let's just work through those. The ad hominem fallacy. Sometimes people also call it by another name. So who knows what that name is and what the definition is of ad hominem? It's the personal attack, correct? And when the personal attack fallacy is committed, what really happens? Okay, so instead of presenting a logical counter-argument, a person attacks the person who made the argument. That's right. So someone says to you, I think a border wall is like a huge waste of money, and it's not necessarily going to be effective at preventing unauthorized immigration. And then the person says, well, I think you're completely wrong because I can smell your breath from like 5 feet away, and so you just don't know what you're talking about. But that person's insulting the individual on a personal level, and they're not even addressing the information of their argument. So you have to kind of make sure that when you don't agree with someone's position or conclusion, that you challenge their evidence and you try to show why that evidence is not correct or why the conclusion doesn't follow. But you shouldn't make it personal. It doesn't matter who's making the argument. It's the argument itself that you're trying to attack, not the individual. Okay, so sometimes you abuse the person by like insulting them directly. Other times you attack their circumstances. Like if somebody says, I don't know, I believe in affirmative action because we have to address patterns of bias in hiring and admissions. And then somebody says, oh, but I mean, look at you, you're a minority, so you're one person that would benefit from it. Therefore, you don't know what you're talking about. But it doesn't matter whether the person's white or a minority or anything else. It's their argument which you have to consider. And so that's another case of ad hominem. Okay, now next, appeal to force, sometimes known as the scare tactic. What is that one? Appeal to force? This is what fallacy? What's the appeal to force, aka scare tactic? I think you know, but you gotta tell me. What's up? Can you let me know? What is it? Appeal to force, really? This is, I thought, not the hardest one. Okay, so someone tries to scare you into agreeing, pretty much, yeah. So a person threatens to either use physical or other means of force to get you to back down or to accept their point of view. Yeah. So sometimes appeal to force can be the threat to actually do something to the person. Sometimes it can be the threat to withdraw certain kinds of behavior that you've been doing for them in the past. Like if somebody says, hey, if you want to keep working here, I don't want to see you saying that you're going to vote, I don't know, yes on Proposition 22. In that case, the person's not trying to make a reasonable argument to you why you should vote this way. They're threatening you into doing it. And so that's appeal to force. It's never a very good way to argue because if you force somebody to do something, that doesn't mean that they really believe in it. It just means that you had leverage over them. So logically speaking, it's not a very effective way to convince a person. But sometimes, of course, people are scared and therefore they do what you want. Okay, well, let's go on next to appeal to pity. Easy enough, I think. What is the appeal to pity? Person tries to do what? I mean, in a way, it's almost like this one's, I understand, kind of tricky to define because it's hard to not just make the definition circular, but that's okay in a way for this one because it's such a narrow definition. It's just when you try to use an appeal to emotion or pity or sympathy, but when it's not relevant to the conclusion or claim. So like if you said, I need an extension, may I please get an extension, professor, because I don't know, I saw like this really sad anime and like the plot line has just got me shook up. So I've been having a hard time focusing. If it's something really trivial and unimportant and that's the reason that you're trying to ask for pity, then it's a clear example. Like, oh, don't give me a ticket, officer. My friend's partner broke up with him and so they've been really having a tough time and I've been helping them, like, whatever. So when a person makes a weak excuse to try and get special sympathetic consideration, that's the kind of appeal to pity. Sometimes it's appeal to emotion, like a person might say, hey, you should donate to this charity because look at this photo of this really abused animal, but it might not be characteristic of the full state of information. So anyway, next up, a popular appeal. That's when the person does what? A popular appeal. Let me know. Okay, yeah, so you appeal to the opinion of the majority to support your conclusion. That's right. Oh, no, sorry, Jade. You're thinking of appeal to ignorance? Maybe, but that comes next. So hold that thought, but you do have the right definition for that following fallacy. But one at a time. Popular appeal, when you try to justify your claim or conclusion by appealing to the majority or popular view. So like saying, I don't know, that like this is the best movie because it's #1 at the box office, or everybody, like Coca-Cola sells the most, so it's the best soda, right? That's not necessarily true. You have to judge it based on its actual qualities rather than just whether it's popular or not. Of course, sometimes popular things are good, but the reason they're good is not that they're popular. They're popular because they're good. So you have to justify it in that way. But anyway, next up, appeal to ignorance. And since you already have it there, Jade, I'll just say that, yeah, it's when somebody argues that something is true just because no one has been able to prove that it's false. To prove that something's true, you actually need real evidence. You can't just say no one can prove otherwise. Like, think about this. You hear this crazy thing that some of the politicians are saying that the election was like rigged or that it was somehow fraudulent. And a lot of times when they go to court, they don't even have, well, every time they go to court, they have no evidence at all. What they say is it's possible someone could have done this, and therefore, since it's possible, don't you believe that it's likely? But they don't actually have the ability to say, now here's a verified case of somebody who fraudulently voted, or here's a verified case of a machine switching votes. So just saying, hey, it probably happened because can you prove there was no fraud? This is not the way that the court system and the law really works. So anyway, yeah, you can't prove things are true just by saying no one's proven false. If that was the case, I could say to you right now, hey, aliens, I'll prove to you right now that they exist. They exist because can you show me that they don't exist? That's not really a proof, though. To have proof, you have to have some affirmative evidence, not just the absence of contrary evidence. Okay, so continuing from there. Hasty generalization. Who knows what this one is? Hasty generalization. Okay, so you make a universal claim based on a sample that's either too small or that's just biased. Right. So like say that someone made the following case to you. Young people love to hunt because I have like, all of my friends are just big time hunters and we're all in college. Now, I don't know, I'm not making a case personally whether that's popular or not. I actually have no idea, but it would be in a way, it would be impossible to make that general claim just based on your own friend group. You know, your friend group might not be reflective of the general population of college students. So you'd need a bigger sample or one that's not self-selected to make the case that this is really generally true. So universal claims that all people of a certain kind or that all cases of a certain kind have one feature, they need better evidence than just a couple of examples. Like if you said, I had a partner that I had a girlfriend, she cheated on me, and then I had a second girlfriend and she also cheated on me, so women are just all cheaters. This is only based on 2 cases, and that's not enough. So, you have to make very careful citation of like widespread available evidence to give a true generalization. Next up, straw man. What's the straw man? If you know. Yeah, so you distort or misrepresent the opponent's argument. And why would you do that? You would do it to try and make the opponent's argument seem like worse than it is and therefore easier to debunk. But that's a fallacy. So like if somebody made a very rational argument why we should shift some of our budgetary resources away from like the police force into like other kind of public services and public programs, and then somebody said, okay, so what you're telling me is let's just get rid of all the police and not have any police protection. That could be considered a straw man, and that's something that you actually see in like some of our current political discourse. I'm not saying that I endorse the position whether I do or not, the whole kind of defund the police argument, but sometimes that statement strikes as kind of rhetorically harsh because it does give off the feeling of like, hey, police shouldn't get any money. But if you look a little closer at what some of the actual propositions or proposals have been, it's like redirect some of the funding so that you also give more money to, like, I don't know, mental health counselors and people that can take care of some problems without the police having to get involved, or direct funding away from like the militarization of police, giving them like heavy armor and like, you know, big kind of almost quasi-military weapons. So you understand, like sometimes people will misrepresent an opponent's argument. Someone says, I think that marijuana is not as harmful as these other narcotic drugs, so we should revisit our federal Schedule 1 classification of it. And then someone says, so you tell me that we should legalize every drug and allow little kids to take them too. That's an insane idea. But that's blowing out of proportion what the one person did say. Okay, so anyway, we're going on. Red herring. What is the red herring? Another type of, or it's another fallacy. But which one is it? Red herring, some about a little fish, little reminder. Dragging attention away, okay, good, that's part of it. Jade, you're saying when one sidetracks an argument, bringing up something unrelated. Yeah, correct. So when you try to divert away from the actual topic by basically changing the subject to something else, like if somebody said to you, climate change is real and it's an urgent problem that the planet has to address, and then someone says to you, no, it's not. Have you really looked at terrorism? I mean, that's the #1 problem, so you're wrong. But they're different issues. So you can't just dispute against one person's claim by bringing up something unrelated. Like, I don't know, somebody says, you don't have the experience to be elected as a senator. You know, it's like a political race. And their opponent says, that's not true at all. For example, didn't you cheat on your wife? You know, so like that has nothing to do with the actual political topic that they're discussing. And by mentioning this other unrelated thing, you're trying to attack their argument. I mean, I guess in a way that's also kind of an ad hominem. But yeah, I could have given a better example perhaps. So the person says, I believe in shifting funding away from the military towards Social Security. And the other person says, your argument's completely off. That's a bad idea because right now the climate is out of control. But that doesn't address the one issue and it's not related to it. Okay, moving ahead. Fallacy of unwarranted assumption. So I'll just say this quickly. That's another type of fallacy. That's the third category that we learned about. That's when the argument contains assumptions that are not justified by evidence. So one of them is begging the question. And what is begging the question all about? This is another fallacy. Let's know the definition. Begging the question, not to be confused with loaded question or questionable cause. Gotta keep those clear. But begging the question, what is it? Okay, good. Thanks, guys. So Jasmine says, when one of the premises in an argument is a reworded version of the conclusion. True, yes. Jade also. It's also called circular argument. That's right. So when you have begging the question fallacy, the conclusion says something, but one of the premises, which is supposed to be the evidence for the conclusion, is just the same information as the conclusion itself. And so in that case, the argument goes in a circle. Like if somebody says, God is real, therefore God exists. That is a circular argument because the conclusion is that God exists, and the evidence is just that he's real. But to make the case for God's existence, you have to mention information in the premises that is not just the same thing as the conclusion. So be careful about, like, you know, wording of the premises. If in some cases the premise will not immediately be noticed as being identical to the conclusion, but when you just analyze it a little and think about what it means, it does say the same thing. Like if a person said, ending a woman choosing to end her pregnancy, or maybe I'll say it differently, a woman who terminates her pregnancy on purpose is doing something wrong, and therefore abortion is immoral. This is just saying that it's immoral therefore it's immoral, because to say it's wrong is a synonym for immoral, and to talk about termination of pregnancy on purpose is just a synonym for abortion. Quick question. Would there ever be questions on the final where more than one fallacy are present in the argument? Oh, no. No, I wouldn't do that, because I think that would make it ambiguous for you. So I would always make sure in stating an example that it was a clear example that would have a clear answer. So not to worry about that one, but thank you. Okay, so let's go on. Inappropriate appeal to authority. What's this? You're trying to make an argument, you're trying to make some claim, but what's the problem when you have this fallacy? Inappropriate appeal to authority. Just let me know. I think you can tell me. Okay, when you ask someone who isn't an expert on something, well, okay, good place to start. Including someone's opinion to support your argument, but the person's not really a proper authority on the subject. That's a very clear and precise statement of it, yes. And so basically what you set out is on the right page, but the only thing is it's not necessarily asking someone, it's you affirming or asserting something based on what you thought someone had said, but the person whose position that you're citing is not actually a qualified expert. It would be like if I said, you know, my science teacher told me that, I don't know, like, let me think here. My science teacher told me that the reason for the American Revolution was actually something having to do with, I don't know, wanting to establish slavery or something. And so, but that's a science teacher. And so you'd have to talk to a historian to get a valid or like legitimate opinion on it. So sometimes a person's expertise in one field does not transfer over to another. And when you cite a person's view as the reason you believe something, then when they're not a real authority on it, you're citing the wrong kind of expert. I'm a philosopher, but I don't know like anything about, I mean, let's see. I don't know a lot about geography, I guess, or I don't know anything about geology, like rocks and stuff and like the layers of the earth. I have no knowledge about that at all. So if I told you that like the third layer down from the earth's surface is made out of, I don't know, clay, and then you go off and say, Dr. Vulich told me that, and therefore it's true, you'd be giving wrong citation of authority. You'd have to refer to someone that really is an expert on that. Okay, the funny thing though is people do this all the time. You know, like for example, even with our current administration, like you saw Trump out there saying like, hey, Dr. Scott Atlas is saying nobody needs a mask, nobody needs to, you know, socially distance. But the guy's a radiologist. Radiology has nothing to do with, you know, infectious diseases and virology. So, I mean, that's the perfect example there. But anyway, let's go on. Loaded question. What's the loaded question? Loaded question. It has to do with asking a question, but what more can you say about it? When you ask a question, but it assumes the answer of a different question. Okay, correct. Yeah. Like if I asked you, let's see, like who is your partner, but I don't even know if you're having a relationship. Like if somebody assumes some fact about you that they don't know, like, oh, here's one. Like a person says, I don't know, I'm trying to think of one. I was thinking of like something along the lines of like, where are you from? Like assuming you're not from here, right? Like that could be a loaded question. And I've seen people, you know, like friends of mine and stuff, people of color that just have like a, you know, racial heritage in their background. And someone will say like, what's your nationality? Assuming that this person's like an immigrant or something like that. Anyway, though, a lot of questions could be asked that are loaded questions. How many times, like, do you prefer hard liquor or beer, and maybe the person doesn't even drink. So anyway, lots of thoughts. Let's go ahead then. False dilemma. What is the false dilemma? Well, you know what? The last one I gave almost sounds like a false dilemma. Maybe I should have phrased it as like, what's your favorite alcohol? And then that assumes the person drinks. But anyway, Jade, when you reduce the response to a complex issue to an either or binary choice, right? So there's more than two possible responses, but the person oversimplifies it as though there's only two. Like if somebody said, like, do you like Coke or Pepsi? And you're thinking, well, I don't really like either one. I don't even drink soda, or I like a third option like Dr. Pepper or something. Or what if a person says, are you registered Democrat or are you registered Republican? That's also a false choice, false dilemma, because many people are registered as nonpartisan or for a third party. I, for example, just as one case, I declined to state the party identification. So I couldn't give an answer to that question, and that's another false dilemma. Or if a person says like two extremes, like what do you think? Should we just not have any masks and like have no social distancing, or should we just all be locked down forever? There's certainly a middle ground between that false choice, which is like to have mitigation, but to still not just go back to public life without any kind of protocols to mitigate. Okay, questionable cause. What's this? The questionable cause concept. Questionable cause. The word cause is right there in the name, and that's a big part of it. So Jasmine, when a person assumes that one thing is the cause of another thing, but without very good evidence to connect them up, yes. Sometimes it's just because one thing happened first and then another thing happened after it, and a person just falsely assumes that the first thing was the cause of the second. But that's not how causation works. You need a better reason to think that something is the cause of an effect to associate the two things. So sometimes superstitious beliefs, like a person says, oh, I put on my lucky socks and then I found $10, so that must be the reason that I found it. But that's not at all the reason. I mean, if that was the case, then you could just put these socks on all the time and just keep getting money reliably. So like coincidence, where a person assumes that the second thing results from the first. I don't know, like here's, like if somebody says, yeah, like, oh, the stock market just went up today and it had a huge like rally, and it's because I think yesterday, I don't know, Peachy's here, she's distracting me a little bit. I bought a cat and the stock market shot up to the ceiling, so maybe that's the real reason. But of course, the two things can't possibly be connected because like the pattern at which people trade and buy and invest is unrelated to your personal situation. So, okay, we can go on. Slippery slope. What is that? When you assume without a very good reason that if what? So yeah, let me know the slippery slope. Okay, you assume that if one type of action is permitted, then all similar type of actions will follow from that. Okay, correct, yeah. So not just that the one action will be taken, but all kinds of worse and worse actions of the same type will happen down the line. So it's like an unjustified prediction of some kind of really catastrophic results that will happen if just one little action is allowed to be taken. So like if somebody said, your kid is asking you for a candy bar at the grocery store, but don't give in to their begging for that, because if you do that, then they're down the line going to be so spoiled that they'll live their whole life with no discipline and they'll never even have a job or be able to finish school. But that's a slippery slope argument. Or someone might say, don't take one sip of that alcohol because it's going to put you on a straight path to becoming a total alcoholic drunk, and you'll be dependent on everyone around you. So don't even do one drink. Or a person says, if you plagiarize on the one assignment, you're bound to become a total cheat throughout life. cheating on everything, and it's going to catch up to you. So some of the things I've mentioned are not good things to do, but the slippery slope projection from it is not necessarily correct either. So I don't know. Sometimes people make weird, really dystopian projections from policy changes. Like they say, some had argued if we allow gays to serve in the military, that's going to slowly but surely put us on a slope to having a totally ineffective fighting force, and then we're just going to be, invaded and overrun. But anyway, all those are fine examples. Naturalistic fallacy, last one from this chapter. What's the naturalistic one? So the assumption that whatever's natural is good and whatever's unnatural is bad. Yes, exactly. Like if a person said, hey, buy this product because it's organic, or don't get a flu shot or a vaccination because they don't grow on trees, or don't worry about, doing cocaine because it just comes from a plant. God put the plants here, so it's all given to us by nature. You have to take a closer look at an individual case by case to figure out whether something that's natural is good or bad, or whether something unnatural is good or bad. Taking medicine, driving a car, using a computer, watching a lecture on YouTube, none of these things happen in like actual nature. These are all technological innovations of man that go beyond nature, but a lot of them, unnatural is bad. It just depends. Okay, so then that's everything from that chapter. Chapter 10 and 11, the mass media. I had you guys do that third homework on this, and so there wasn't a lot of content on it in our lectures, so I just had a couple questions. One of them is, what's media literacy? And that's just the ability to understand and evaluate the effect of the media on you. So that's the basic definition of that one. And product placement. Anybody remember what that one is? Product placement? That's when they do what? It's like a tactic to advertise. When the product is placed in the programming itself, not during the breaks or during intermission. That's right. So like if the movie shows people drinking Coca-Cola in the scenes, if the TV show has people wearing like Nike or Adidas while they're hosting the show or while they're participating in it. Another case could be like logos of clothing and other products placed on like NASCAR's vehicles as they're driving around during the race, or in other sports like football, having sponsored ads that are on the side of the arena. Yeah, and it's hard to avoid those ads, obviously, because you're watching the programming itself, and it sneaks in a covert reference to some kind of marketing. Now, three main purposes of ads. One of them is to create product awareness. One of them is to stimulate demand, and one is to inform people about the product or service itself. So we see ads that accomplish any of those three purposes, sometimes more than one in a single case. Okay, now chapter 12 was next. That's all about science. You guys recently had a quiz on the chapter 12, so some of it might still be memorable in your mind. Let's go through some of those things. You know what one thing is, though? Did I even... Oh yeah, so sorry, it's a little out of order. I would have put number 13 at the top because it was the first thing we talked about, but let's just go through it in the order, I guess, written here in the study guide. The assumption of unity, that the universe is overall like unified. So what does that mean? That it can eventually be explained according to one set of natural and physical laws. So the whole universe is like one unified structure, and that means that we believe, or scientists believe, that it will someday be possible to explain all of it according to one set of scientific principles and natural laws. What are some limitations of science? Well, one is that it can only study the things that are observable. So if there are things that are not observable, then they'll be hard to understand. I mean, just even like thoughts, for example, that we have in our mind, no one can see them. So the concept of like, what is a thought, what is consciousness, is difficult for science. Another limitation is the assumption of predictability, like that the natural laws and patterns will always hold into the future. We have to assume this, but we can't necessarily prove it totally beyond all possible doubt. Another one is that Science, of course, presupposes that the external world outside of you exists, which I don't think anybody seriously doubts, but it's something also that can't be absolutely proven, because all you have to judge that question on is your sense data. And in case you were living in a dream or a hologram or some type of simulation, then you'd still have the same kind of sense data. So we can go on from there. What is the scientific method? There's a lot of steps to it, but overall it's a procedure that starts with observation of a problem, then it moves to a hypothesis about what the explanation of that is, why it happens, and then finally results in an experiment which will test the hypothesis. How is the three-stage model of critical thinking somehow similar to the scientific method? Okay, let's quickly ask, what are the three stages of both? So the three stages of critical thinking and then the three stages of the scientific method. What are those two? You guys, by the way, I mean, Peach is being so cute right now. You see this? She's just like completely flat back, just like laying there the whole time while I'm lecturing. So it's just a really good kitty. But anyway, so good, Jasmine. With science, it's observation, which leads to hypothesis, which leads to experiment. With critical thinking, it's experience, which leads to interpretation, which leads to analysis. And how are those three stages similar in the two cases? Well, observation / experience is where the process starts, and that's where you just take note that something is happening or that it did happen. The second stage, hypothesis / interpretation, they're both similar because in both of them, you're trying to explain the reason why the event happened that you observed or that you experienced. And then the last stage, experiment or analysis, they're similar because they both involve checking whether the interpretation is correct, whether the hypothesis or interpretation is correct, whether the explanation is correct. Okay, so the first step in the science method is to identify a problem. Can you say more about what identifying a problem involves? And then we can move to the next page. Identify the problem, meaning what? Not the I think toughest definition of all. You could tell me. Identifying the problem, the first step to get the scientific method started. What is this? You shouldn't just say, oh, isn't it just the three words, identify a problem? I mean, unpack the meaning of it a little bit. Oh yeah, sure, good, thanks, Jade. So observe the world and then just identify an unexplained phenomenon. So you look at the world and you see something, an event, but you don't understand yet why it happened or how it happened. And you want to find that out. So that's how we get started. We need a phenomenon to explain. The second step, develop an initial hypothesis. Okay, so what is this all about? You're trying to formulate your initial, and meaning first, educated scientific guess to explain how the problem occurs or why. Correct, Jasmine, yes. The fourth step, where we test this hypothesis, what is this? We design an experiment in either a real world or laboratory setting that can prove or disprove the hypothesis. After this, the last step, evaluate the hypothesis based on the basis of the results of the test. So after your test is over with, you'll go back and see, did my hypothesis get confirmed or was it disconfirmed by this experiment? In case it was confirmed, you would publish your results and the scientific community would try to replicate the results. But if the hypothesis was falsified or disconfirmed by the test, then you have to develop a new hypothesis and run through the experiment again until it gets, some hypothesis gets confirmed. Okay, relevance to the problem under study. A quality of a good theory or hypothesis is that it has to be relevant to the problem, meaning that it has to at least relate to or be about the observed unexplained phenomenon. Predictive power. So good scientific theories can be used to accurately predict the occurrence of similar events in the future. So I guess like the scientific theories of astronomy that allow us to predict the motions of the stars and planets give us precise knowledge about like when the next eclipse will happen or when there will be like a meteor shower, for example. The Big Bang Theory allowed us to make pretty accurate predictions about the distribution of certain kinds of gases in the universe. So, okay, let's go on. Copernicus. Who is this man? What did he do? Nicholas Copernicus. It's a very important kind of founding father type figure of science in the West. But what was his whole legacy? He did discover heliocentrism, and that replaced geocentrism. Who could tell me what those words mean? The heliocentric and the geocentric model. Just a word about those things, just so we're all clear what they do mean. Okay, yes. So heliocentrism, that the sun is the center of the local solar system, and geocentrism, that the Earth is at the middle. Before him, the church insisted that people agree with the geocentric model because it was thought that God made the universe, of course, and if he did, then he would have wanted mankind to be right in the middle because we're the special creation of God and created in his image. So it was thought to be like really unorthodox and heretical to say that the sun is at the middle, but he proved it with telescopes, and it's been obviously proven, absolutely proven by now. Okay, so anyway, let's go on. Materialism in science. What is that? Materialism in science. Okay, good. So the assumption that everything in the universe is made out of physical matter, including us and our consciousness. Correct. So materialism is the view that everything's physical. Everything's made out of just atoms at the end of the day. And so if you're believing in materialism, then you think that everything's made out of atoms, even us. Even stuff that we don't usually think of as having a physical basis, like thought and consciousness, perception, memory. It's all just the brain and the physical constituents that make the brain up. Okay, so that's the materialism idea. What is science itself? What is science? So what is it? Reasoning from observable facts to testable explanations for the facts. That's right. So with science, we start by observing just facts that we see, and we try to go from there to understanding why those things happen, in other words, to explain them. But the explanations that we give for the facts, we try to make them explanations that you can test so that you can verify that they're correct. So that's all good. So then, science and religion. The question here is, I should have been a little bit more clear, but what it's asking about are the different attitudes that one can have about the relationship of science and religion. So we talked about like 4 viewpoints on that. Some people say, well, what are some of those, if you can recall? Obviously, controversies and disagreements sometimes seem to exist between religion and science. But what are attitudes that different people might have about those supposed conflicts or disagreements? Okay, so 2 are that religion takes priority over science or vice versa. So that's good. When they conflict, don't forget that point. So like if they don't agree on something specific, then some people will argue, I'll favor the scientific explanation when this disagreement happens. Some would say, no, I favor the religious explanation when science doesn't agree. And then there's two other ones, though, so let's just get them all. What are the other ones? So we got the two. Okay, so you've also, Jasmine, going to help with the rest. So one is that they agree or that they're compatible. And then the other one is that they don't have the same subject, so they're on different topics. Correct. So some people say that religion and science actually are compatible with each other, meaning that if you interpret religion the right way, it actually says the same thing that science does. And other people think that they're actually not even about the same topic, so that they can't really conflict. Those people think that science is all about physical reality, and that religion is about spiritual and moral parts of reality. Okay, so theory versus hypothesis. What's the difference between the two? So let me do those in the opposite order. What's a hypothesis? What's a hypothesis? With the second step. What is it though? Come on, guys, don't make Jasmine do it all. Okay, Alec, good. An educated guess about how something works. Correct. It's like an educated scientific guess to explain the occurrence of some phenomena that you've observed. Okay, so then what is a theory? A theory is kind of like a souped-up hypothesis, but, well, you can tell me. I don't want to be too precise until you say what I'm referring to. So what is a theory? It starts off as a hypothesis. What makes it into a theory? It's a well-proven hypothesis, right? So it's a hypothesis that's been very well verified through experiment and replication. Good. So the closest that science can come to saying we've got the truth is that we have a theory here, and this theory has been very well established. Science never makes an absolute claim of total certainty, but the theory is the most reliable thing that you can assume to be true. Okay, so let's go on then. Number 17. Gathering additional information to refine the hypothesis. Okay, so essentially, sometimes you've got your hypothesis, but after you start to do initial fact-finding, you discover that you might have to tweak it a little bit or make an adjustment to it. So this is when you tweak or adjust the hypothesis based on the results of your initial fact-finding and data collection. Like one example could be you're thinking that the rise of social media has led to an increase in like youth depression and suicide because you see that the rate has increased, and at the same time people have started to develop more use of social media. But then you start to research it and you see, it doesn't seem like it affects people who use these sites, but only these other sites. So then you refine the hypothesis from just being social media itself to being perhaps particular websites. In fact, there was a study kind of like that said that the photo sharing sites have a greater power to induce people to feel like lesser than or like somehow socially alienated. But whatever, it's just one possible study. So let's go on. Next, it's consistency with other established theories. What is that quality of a good scientific hypothesis? To be consistent with the other theories means what? Sorry, I'm just going to plug this power cable into my laptop. So we got plenty of juice. Okay. So yes, a good theory will fit in with and it will not contradict other well-proven theories. So when you have a good hypothesis or theory, it's not going to cancel out or contradict the other stuff that we think we've already pretty well proven. It's supposed to fit in and build on that. But if it contradicts it, then that's usually a reason to reject the hypothesis. Okay, so let's go on next. What about falsifiability? What is this? What is falsifiability? How you doing, BT? So yes, a good theory is able to be proven false. Falsifiability itself is just the ability of a good theory to be proven false. Only if it's falsifiable can it be tested. But don't think that falsifiability means that it is in fact false. It just means that there's some way that we could try and test whether it is. So if I think that, I don't know, introducing a certain chemical to another chemical is going to cause a type of reaction, then that's falsifiable because I can perform an experiment, and if the reaction does not happen, then my hypothesis has been invalidated. But if we don't even know how to test whether a claim is false, then there's no way to prove it either, because knowing what a falsifying instance of it is allows you to establish the test. The test is going to see whether the falsification happens or not. But if you don't even know what falsification would be, even hypothetically, then you're not in a position to make a test, and therefore it's not even scientific. Okay, like Freud, for example, had unscientific theories in some cases because he said things that we could not test for. Or if you claim that there's no way to know the claim is true, like, for example, that you don't think that there's such a thing as like sexual attraction to the opposite sex parent that's like psychologically suppressed in your subconscious, well, he would just say, of course you don't think so because you repress the knowledge of it, so there's no way you can verify this through experiment. But that means that it's not really a scientific claim. Okay, so going ahead from there. Simplicity, or sometimes it's called Occam's razor. What is this concept of simplicity, or so-called Occam's razor in science? If you have a couple of different explanations for some fact, then the simpler one, is the one that's more likely to be true. So if you have multiple different explanations for something, the simplest one is going to be the one that's likeliest to actually be correct and true. That's a basic assumption that's really fundamental to science. It's the idea that the universe is elegant and parsimonious, so a cause-effect explanation is likelier to be the simplest one. Okay, we can continue then. Peachy, please, no. The assumption of predictability, that's the next one. What's predictability? It's the assumption that the universe overall is orderly and predictable. So what it means, among other things, is that if you've established a cause-effect relationship and we know how it works, then that same causal relationship will always continue to work in the same way. So established cause-effect relationships will be repeatable and they will hold forever. If I choose to hold this marker up at a freestanding height and release it, we already know that it would fall, and not just right now in this one case, but we know that it would continue to fall as many times as I dropped it forever going forward in the future, because the thought is that the law of gravity is not temporary, but it's permanent, and that it's not just a local concept that it works in some parts of the universe, but that it works in the same way throughout the universe because there's just one set of predictable patterns and laws. Okay, next is objectivity. Tell me, what is objectivity within science? It's a belief, but it's what belief? The belief that we can do what? Assumption of objectivity, that we can do what type of thing? Okay, Jasmine, you're saying that we can learn about reality as it really is and with no bias. Correct. It's the belief that there's an objective world outside of our minds. So the world is not just a bunch of thoughts and feelings that we have, but it's something objective and factual. And science believes that we can actually get to the true facts and we can discover them without bias or without our own personal opinions kind of distorting our view or clouding our judgment. Then there's Sir Francis Bacon. Okay, this was a British philosopher and statesman who basically created the scientific method back in the 1600s. So that's a huge contribution because science is fundamentally based on that method and we still use it. Now empiricism, empiricism appears in different parts of the class. It also showed up in the part of chapter 5 where we talked about, chapter 4 where we talked about knowledge. But it's the view that most of our human knowledge comes from where? Empiricism, anybody? Most knowledge comes from what? From the 5 senses and experience and observation, yes, correct. So they think of that knowledge comes from the things that you can see, taste, touch, hear, and smell, and observe with your five senses, for the most part. Okay, then, so next up, and that's an important idea in science, by the way, because science starts with observation, and everything has to be testable. So the claims made in science critically rely on the ability to observe and prove through observation what you're claiming. Okay, so now chapter 9 is the last chapter of the book that we all studied, and so that's kind of more recent material. It's all about ethics and critical thinking, and so there's a set of questions on that we we'll cover with whatever time we still have today, and then the other review session that we have for Thursday, we'll try to finish a little bit more of it. Yeah, so what is ethics in the first place? Big idea of ethics is that it's all about, or the study of what type of stuff? Study of morality and moral concepts, correct. So, in other words, having to do with right and wrong, good and bad, moral and immoral, justice and injustice, vice and virtue. Okay. So whenever we think about all those kinds of concepts mentioned in that list, we're dealing with ethics, and that's the main part of philosophy and everyday life. So then moral reasoning is what concept? Well, this is when you're the person who makes a choice or a decision about what you think is right or wrong, or about what you think you should or shouldn't do. So it's critical judgment about the morality of something, whether it's an action that you're going to take or not take, or whether you're making a moral judgment about a practice or action of others. We do that all the time. Sometimes you find yourself feeling morally upset at something happening in the world, like that was wrong, and I'm offended or upset by it. In other cases, you feel that someone did something very good and righteous, and so you feel like, wow, that's a very morally upstanding act, and I feel like that deserves praise. Okay, then next, 3 types of moral action. Maybe we can quickly say what those are. And yeah, so morally, good Lauren, morally impermissible, morally permissible, and morally obligatory. Yes. But what are they each about? Well, morally impermissible actions are actions that are wrong to do, that are not okay to do, like killing, cheating, lying, rape, torture, all kinds of terrible things that are not right. Morally permissible is the reverse. That's actions that are not wrong, and they are okay to do. So that could be like, helping someone clean their house, or it could be helping them move in, or it could be just taking a nap. It could be riding a bike. Anything that's not immoral or blameworthy fits into that category. And then morally obligatory means that you must do it, and it would be wrong or immoral to not do it. Like, I don't know, providing payment for a service or good that you've already been given by a vendor, keeping a promise, and then not doing all the impermissible things like not lying, not cheating, not killing, stealing, the rest. Okay, moral values. These are values that are good for who? Values that we sometimes have in life that, motivate our choices and decisions. But when they're moral values, they're considered to be good for who? Okay, good. Values that benefit you and others, and they're good for their own sake. Examples include forgiveness, compassion, justice, and things of that kind. So having those kinds of values, you value being forgiving, you value being fair and just, you value being compassionate. When you have those type of values, they lead you to do things that are good for other people, and it also makes you feel good too. And sometimes it doesn't work out the way you hoped, but it's still thought of as a good thing just in its own right that you have these features in your character. Okay, non-moral values. Those are more self-interested. They're goal-oriented values, and they're like used as a means to an end. They're used as a means to the goal, to the end of your own happiness. So that's stuff like wealth, popularity, fame, prestige. Those values, of course, lead you to make choices in life too. but you're making them for your own self-interest rather than out of regard for your moral conduct or how you're going to help others. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's just pointed out to be mindful that there's also moral values and that you should have kind of both to keep your life balanced. Because if you don't care about anything or anyone except for yourself, it's kind of hard to have the most valued relationships and deep bonds that really, I think, make our lives so important and interesting. So anyway, that's just a few things about the two types of values. So after this, there's discussion of these different types of moral sentiments that you see listed here. And then there's some discussion at bottom about the different types of moral theory. So we've got a little bit more to cover on Thursday, but we should be able to get through it all. So I'll pretty much, I think, call it for now. I think we've had a good session and we've covered a lot of good ground. So thanks again, everyone. And as I've said, you guys know Cal State Fullerton final for this class, Philosophy 105. It's going to be Tuesday the 15th from 5 to 6:50. Sometimes I have some students from another section that are also watching this, but if you're not in the Cal State Fullerton Tuesday, Thursday, 4 to 5:15, then that does not apply to you, but that does apply to you Fullerton guys, and you're my primary group. But just in case anyone's watching this from a different section, just know that that references to the Fullerton group. Okay, so everyone, are we good? Let me know here in this chat if so, and then I'll close us out for the time being. Okay, I can see you there. Thanks, Sebastian, and everyone else for showing up and helping us do our review. We've got one more meeting on this, and then there's the final coming up afterwards. So for now, have a good one. I'm going to close both meetings. It takes a moment. So first I'm going to stop the Zoom, and then I'm going to stop the YouTube Live. If you want to go back and view this YouTube Live recording, it'll be on the archived YouTube channel for your convenience later. Okay, so I'm stopping this.
Thank you, Dr. Volch.
Thanks again so much. Take care. I'm ending this one. Bye-bye, guys. And now, some of you are still here. See you guys. Well, anyway, take care, and I will see you then on Thursday, all right? Bye-bye.